David Scowsill, President and Chief Executive of the World Travel and Tourism Council.
Okay, thank you for talking to Breaking Travel News today at World Travel Market 2011. We've just stepped out of your press conference where you've lowered your forecasts for 2012 economic growth.
Yes, we have. With 2011 first, we've lowered our forecast from 4.5% growth to 3.2%. And when you look back over the last 11 months and you start to add up the Japan tsunami, the earthquake, the difficulties in North Africa, now we have floods in Thailand, it's been a very, very difficult period for the travel industry. And so coming out of the deepest recession probably we've ever seen, we're beginning to see signs towards the back end of this year that the growth is not as high as we anticipated. And for 2012 we see that following through. So we are projecting 3.2% growth for 2011 and 3.3% for 2012.
How about looking slightly further into the future though? Do you see growth returning or accelerating after that? Yeah,
we see it returning. If you look backwards over time, the industry's always grown about 4% every year, with the exception of these short, sharp shocks we have like 9/11 or SARS or something very specific like a tsunami and the earthquake. So we see it absolutely getting back on track. So for the next 10 years we're forecasting about 4% growth. And over that period of time, the total travel and tourism industry will grow from $6 trillion of contribution to $9 trillion in 10 years' time. That's about 9% of global GDP, so it's a huge industry.
You mentioned Japan there. You've been very forthcoming in your support for the country following the tsunami. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the tsunami and the earthquake had a dramatic impact on what's been going on in Japan, and they've had this lingering perception that there's a radiation problem there, which is non-existent now. Japan is a safe place to go. And we're taking our global summit there in April next year, specifically to spend 24 hours in Sendai, which is the epicenter of the tsunami and the earthquake, and then the rest of the time in Tokyo running our global event. And so for us and also for the Japanese industry, it's a key milestone in the recovery process for that country.
That's one of two events you're hosting next year. You're heading out to Mexico as well, I believe.
Yes, we are. President Calderon in Mexico is going to be the chair of the G20 next year, and the G20 leaders are meeting in Mexico in June. And prior to that, about 1 month before that, we're going to be running a WTTC summit for the Americas, running alongside a tourism ministers meeting in Mexico. So between those two meetings, we'll be putting some significant things on the agenda for the G20 meeting that President Calderon chairs in June.
And you've been working with the UN WTO as well, with your Global Leaders for Tourism campaign.
Yes.
Is that sort of an ongoing process for you?
Yes, we launched it actually with President Calderon in Mexico back in March this year, and we have done 15 heads of state and prime ministers so far. And the way it works is we present them an open letter, which just requires them to talk publicly about the impact of travel and tourism, that it's a bigger industry than the automotive industry, and it's just behind banking in terms of GDP effect. And then after we've had a public statement from the Prime Minister or the President, we then have 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So Talib Rifai representing the government sector, UNWTO, myself representing private sector, and we talk to those heads of state about the specific items that are important to that part of the world. So they might be visas, there might be taxation, there might be investment in infrastructure or investment in hotels, for example. It's a very effective campaign and it's taking fire very quickly. So we've done 15 heads of state, the last ones being China, Japan and Colombia in South America.
Well, we'll see you in Japan and see what progress has been made there.
Great,
thank you very much.
Thank you.